Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Samay Zake. Now, immigration at or even before retirement means you have to consider what laws might affect your hard-earned savings and whether or not this is the ideal route for you to take. What are some of the things you should think carefully about if immigration has crossed your radar with your retirement plans? Joining me in studio is Ryno Viljoen. He is founder and CEO of cashcows.com. Ryno, thank you so much for your time. We're talking about immigration and financial immigration. Just give us a very quick distinction between the two.
Financial immigration is one when South Africans want to exit financially from South Africa. There's a process that one needs to go through, a financial migration process, to take your funds out of the country. Because in terms of exchange control, current laws in South Africa, one needs to, you cannot simply move your money, you have to go through a process. And that's where the financial immigration plays a part, and that's where one needs to go through a process to facilitate a migration.
Can one leave their money behind?
You can leave your money behind. If you reside offshore or you've moved, you can leave your money in the country. There's no laws prohibiting you to do so.
Now, let's look at, and I think it's something that people don't often think about, but the implications of how this might affect your retirement fund if you're to take the money out.
Yeah, it's a good question, because what happens if South Africans leave the country? So we deal with a lot of South African expats that's already left, that's outside the country. And the only asset that they left behind, because traditionally you could not take out your retirement savings from South Africa. Although there's some laws that's changed recently in 2008, which allows the withdrawal of retirement annuities before maturity date. In terms of other retirement funding, your pension funds and preservation funds, if you have made a previous withdrawal, obviously the funds are locked into South Africa. You cannot take them out. You have to wait till retirement date, which earliest is 55, as you probably know, before you can move those funds. But yeah, that's how it.
Yeah, let's look at some of the laws. I mean, you mentioned some which have changed in 2008. What are the ones that are specific to this issue that I should be wary about when considering immigrating?
Yeah, specifically referring to retirement annuity policies, those where you were not allowed to make any withdrawals, early withdrawals from your retirement annuity, because that's a contractual arrangement that you have with the insurance company. And the Tax Act changed in 2008, which allowed for retirement annuities to be extracted. And that's where the financial immigration came into play, because one of the requirements to withdraw a retirement annuity was to go through this financial immigration process. And a financial immigration process, as I described, is where you have to approach the Reserve Bank with an application and obtain a tax clearance from SARS for immigration purposes, where you basically declare your assets and liabilities from a South African point of view. So once they rubber stamp your immigration, then you are deemed to be a non-resident for exchange control purposes, and then you can move your money out the country, especially retirement annuities, because that was the a product that was stuck. You could never move it before that, as I said, until retirement date.
Taxes and fees that one can expect to pay for this sort of exercise?
If you once again refer to retirement annuities, in terms of fees, if you early surrender retirement policy, there's usually penalties and fees associated with an early surrender. So that's why it's advisable to always just check before you go through that process to surrender policy, to see what the penalty or fees are. Otherwise, in terms of tax, if you surrender retirement annuity, it's also subject, like any other early withdrawal, the withdrawal table, tax table. So you're taxed according to early withdrawal tax table if you withdraw your retirement annuity.
Is it fair to say, or let me rephrase, immigrating with your retirement savings, can it be, is it a more or less risky option to exercise?
It depends from client to client. You know, what we usually advise clients, you know, if you reside offshore and you've made the choice to make a country abroad your new home, it's something to consider in terms of your retirement savings, because where you look at South Africa with the volatility of the rand, and if you want to retire, let's call it Australia, and you want to retire in Australian dollars, it doesn't really make sense to keep your retirement savings in rand, because you know it's not the value of your savings differ all the time, because you can imagine if you want to retire on $1,000, you can't bet that you're going to get your $1,000 from South Africa, and it depends on how the rand moves, and so on and so forth. So immigration and moving your retirement funds into the country where you want to retire makes sense from our point of view, or that's what we advise clients. Take the money out, reinvest it in your country where you wish to retire, and then you've got more control over your retirement funding, because you've got the same options in any other country than you got in South Africa in terms of investment options and so on and so forth. Tax obviously plays a role, because if you do early retire, let's say from a retirement annuity, the tax regime is more penal than going through the traditional route of the retirement option, where you've got the 500,000 and tax rebate, which you do not have available from an early withdrawal point of view. But what we've seen over time is, as the rand has weakened in the last 5 years against the major currencies, it makes sense, if you've got a long-term view in mind, to rather move your money and bet on the currency that you are wanting to retire in.
Okay, all right, let's leave it there for a moment. We're going to be taking a break. We'll be back on the other side of this. Before the break, we were chatting about the various laws that govern moving your retirement annuities and the like. But let's look at, cashcows.com been in operation for some 7 years. If I'm considering to emigrate financially, is it a process I should handle on my own, or are you going to strongly advise that I approach cash cows?
We've been approached by a lot of clients on this matter, because we give a lot of information about this subject matter, because there's very little information about immigration and how this affects your finances. And what we've learned over time, a lot of people, you should be able to do it by yourself. We call it our DIYs, to take your money out the country and move your finances. But what we've learned is it would be advisable probably to gather proper professional advice in terms of moving your money, and in terms of to have a proper financial migration plan, because it's complex. Immigration per se is complex, and we've referred to exchange control, which plays a role. Tax plays a role, not only in South Africa, but also when you move money in whichever jurisdiction you're moving it to offshore, there are tax implications most probably as well. Tax implications and opportunities. There are double taxation agreements which South Africa signed with various countries offshore. So there are opportunities in that, and that's why coming to professionals, or that's what we've learned over our last 7 years, is to identify those opportunities, because we've learned as we've gone along, where people have approached us, but what about this and what about that? So we've made that part of our offering to offer that to new clients coming to us and asking us for advice. But that it makes sense to go to a professional and get all the information that you can. You can still make your own choices, how you want to deal with it, but at least gather proper information.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you bring up the opportunities aspect of it, because you don't often think about that, do you? It's always, I'm going to move my money from this jurisdiction to, this jurisdiction, and that's it. Just expand a bit more on the opportunities front and what you guys have seen there.
Yeah, it's in terms of a double taxation agreements, for instance, which is a good example. We one are allowed to move when you move money between countries. If we can use Australia as an example, talking about tax opportunities. Australia has got also their retirement savings is wrapped up in it's called a superannuation. So like we got retirement funding, this is called a superannuation. So South Africans have the opportunity, whatever money we move that's been liquidated into Australia, that can be invested into that fund, free of tax, because once you retire out of the superannuation fund in Australia, for instance, it's tax-free. So you can enter into that fund without paying any tax, and once you retire out of that fund, your return on that is tax-free. Yeah. So those are the opportunities, and also tax refunds depends on how long you've been out the country. And when you do retire from your fund in South Africa, there's a refund methodology that one looks at to see what is taxable in which jurisdiction, and so there's opportunities within that as well. Not only taxable in South Africa, you might be claiming a refund offshore.
So a lot to look at when it comes to opportunities, and obviously the cost of moving that money. Let's look at legislation. If you benchmark us against other jurisdictions, as far as moving your money across jurisdictions, how do we compare?
From what we've seen, our experience, we've dealt with 75 countries so far. Our biggest jurisdictions that we deal with is Australia, New Zealand, the UK, US, and Canada. And I think from where South Africa is positioned, although we've penal in terms of exchange control, another step that one needs to go through to move your money, comparing to the rest of the world, and our tax legislation follows as a first world tax legislation compared to what's out there, and how what opportunities lies within it. So my opinion on that is we are exchange control plays a role in South Africans' lives, which hinders us or puts us a bit at the back foot compared to any other person that might be looking at migration.
Earlier on, you mentioned a financial migration plan that you guys offer. Tell us more about that and why one should consider having such a plan.
Yeah, because finances is usually it plays a big role when we start thinking about migration. Because I mean, you obtain the natural process would be you obtain a entry into a new country, or immigration. You obtain a visa or a residency or whatever the case might be. Then one plans your move and so on and so forth. And your financial planning around the whole immigration is very important. So that's what we also have learned over time. It's very important to look at your total asset base in South Africa to decide, to see what you're moving across, what's the timing of moving assets across, because that within all of that, it's important to do proper planning. So that's why we offer a service of a financial migration plan to really look at what you've got, which country you're going to, and then really disseminate from what you've got and how to move your money in the most cost-effective way, and also in terms of exchange control to comply to what exchange control limitations there are to take your money.
Yeah. Ryno, very quickly, some final thoughts when it comes to financial immigration?
Yeah, you've asked a question earlier. Financial immigration is a complex subject. There's not a lot of information regarding financial immigration, and that's why we are in this space. It's our heart to serve South African expats all over the world, and to really stand in the gap where we can assist the South Africans, because we are all South Africans and we would like to make a difference, and that's why seek professional advice. Advice is for free, so you might as well ask before you just put your foot in it to get proper advice, and then you can still make your own decisions on how you want to do it. But gather information and ask for good advice, and then you make up your own mind.
Thank you. We'll leave it there.
Thank you.
That is Ryno Viljoen. He is founder and CEO of Cash Cows.